Well, we're going to talk about emotional scars, and I know that they can cut really deep. And you've written a book called Wounded by God's People. So why is it that wounds from people in the church or Christians, why is it that they hurt so much?
I think as I've reflected, they hurt the most because people within our church or our Christian family, we don't expect it to come from them. So they're people that we love, that we've trusted, that we feel safe with. And then when they turn on us and they lie to us, or they reject us, or betray us, or slander us, the wounds just go real deep. And it also gets confused because we feel if God's people treat us that way, there's a little sneaking suspicion, does God treat us that way? So when the church or his people reject us, do we feel rejected by God? And so it can get all messed up in our relationship with God. And so I just felt that God has allowed me to be wounded in ways that I've learned from, that maybe I could write it down to help other people get over it, to be healed from their wounds.
Now, why is it that people, if they're hurt by people in the church, they kind of turn it to God and they turn away from him? There's so many people, that I know that are like, I don't want anything to do with church or God. So what would you say to those people, that God is not like the people that have hurt them?
Well, he's not. And I think to turn away from God and to hold on to our bitterness, our anger, our unforgiveness, it's like drinking poison, hoping the other person dies. So we just really hurt ourselves. And if we stay in that stubborn, rebellious, hard-hearted state, our spirits are going to shrivel. We're going to miss out on the blessing that God has for us.
Now, I know there's someone watching who's like, that's me. They've been rejected by a church or they've had to walk out. This book is for people like them, people on the outside, people on the periphery, yes, that people, would normally, look down on. And you've given an account or a parallel with the story of Hagar. Yes. And you said that the God of the Hagar still cares, yes, about them. That's right. What would you say to them?
It's the sweetest thing because I don't know why within the church there are the inside people and the outside people. And if we're not careful, that inside group becomes sort of like a clique. You've got the leadership, you've got the favorites that they call on, and they can take a personal dislike to somebody, and then they make that person feel that they're on the outside. And the person, if he carries it over to their relationship with God, they feel that God is just for the inner circle, that he just has a core group, and they're on the outside of that core group. And that's not true. God, he's not an elitist, I write in the book. He loves the people on the periphery. He loves the people on the outside. And I think that's one reason Jesus was born in a stable. He was born outside of Jerusalem, outside of a royal palace, born as a poorest of the poor, in a stable, for God to tell us in a beautiful way that he loves those on the outside, and he sent his son to those on the outside. And so the story of Hagar, she was an Egyptian, she was a slave, she was inside of Abraham and Sarah's household. I think she had come to love Abraham and Sarah. She felt safe with them, she respected them, she'd seen Abraham build his altar, she'd heard him call on his name of his God. And then one day, Sarah comes to her and says, I want you to sleep with my husband and have his baby. And she's a slave, she has no say, so she does, she gets pregnant. And so because Sarah has wounded her, she turned around and wounded Sarah. Sarah abused her. It just became a cycle. She ran away. And God, the angel of the Lord, who commentators tell us is Jesus before Bethlehem, but he finds that little runaway slave on the road in the desert. She's going back to her mama. She's going back to the wilderness of Shur, which is where she came from. And he finds her, and as a result, he helps her work through her pain. Then he tells her she's got to go back to Sarah. But before she goes back, she names it, I've seen the one who sees me. And she had a personal relationship with God at that point. So it's a very precious story. It's a love story between God and Hagar.
I love the example you give of God the Father. Now, your own father, Billy Graham, has been such a great example for you that he's always standing there with arms wide open. So talk about that and how that's really meant a lot to you.
It's the sweetest story. I put it towards the end of the book. And I just read this to my daddy, actually, because he has macular degeneration. He can't read anymore. And it was a story of going home. And it was the first time I'd been home since my mother's death, I believe, if I remember right. And it's a long journey. It's a 4-hour journey through traffic and rain and the rest of it. And I got up to my father's house, And I put my things down, my bags and all my things, and then ran through the house. And as I got towards where he is, I could hear him calling me, Ann. And I went into where my father was, and he threw out his arms. And when I gave him a hug, he just kept holding me. And he just held on to me and told me how much he loved me. He was so glad I'd come home. And it's such a beautiful picture of when we've been wounded or hurt and we go through those dark times. If we will come to our Heavenly Father and put our bags down, our business, our problems, our resentment, our anger, our unforgiveness, and just put our stuff down, all our baggage down. And then run to our Heavenly Father. Don't even walk, you can run to Him. Put your arms of faith around Him and say, Daddy, Abba, Father, I want to feel your presence. I want to know your love. And He'll put His arms around us. And in our hearts, we can hear Him whispering, I love you, thank you, come home. Instead of running away from God, to run to Him. It's the story of the prodigal son in a way, but we run to Him. And our Heavenly Father is there waiting to embrace us. And He will comfort us and take the pain out of our hearts and give us a purpose and a future if we let Him. We have to be willing to let go of that past and forgive whoever has hurt us, but put our bags down, all the stuff that goes with it, and just let God wrap His arms of love around us.